Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our first webinar session and today's meeting of the TLP Stakeholder Reference Group. I thought it'd be useful to give you a bit of background as to why we're doing this as a webinar instead of our usual face-to-face meeting. As we know that many of our stakeholders hold full-time jobs or have commitments that mean they cannot easily attend a face-to-face meeting. Therefore, we're organising a series of webinars over the next 12 months, and this is our first sort of trial session where we'll be using Skype Meeting Broadcast, which is the software that's hosting this session, as this enables us to schedule, produce and broadcast either meetings or events online. So the aim of these is to be sort of topic-led going forward, as opposed to the general updates that you are used to at our stakeholder forums. So Skype allows us to broadcast a presentation, show a manager speaking to you, and hold an online Q&A with stakeholders whilst you're seated in the very own comfort of either your home or on your lunch break in the office. So the broadcast of the webinar will also be recorded and uploaded onto the Stakeholder Relations extranet, which some of you are familiar with. If not, we can give you the details of that after this session, where you will then be able to watch the webinar back at your own convenience, which is great if you haven't been able to take in everything in the session, or if you want to share it with your members or you've not been able to attend for any reason. This does not mean, though, that we will be stopping the normal meetings we hold 4 times a year. For the time being, we will make sure that all content is covered in both the face-to-face meetings and the webinar, so that you can choose at the moment how you receive updates from us. So today's session is our TLP Stakeholder Reference Group. So I will pass over in a moment to Liam Farrell from the TLP team, who you've met before. Liam will give us an update on the first 7 weeks of London Bridge since it opened, and a few more updates from the TLP team, and this will be followed by a Q&A session. Phil Hutchinson will then give an update on the outcome of the 2018 timetable. We are sharing this with you ahead of our wider stakeholder communications, as you are our reference group. So the rest of the stakeholder communications will go live later this week, and it will also be included in next week's local stakeholder forums, which some of you are attending. So just some hints and tips to make this session run as successfully as possible. Please set your usernames for questions, so you can type questions throughout the presentations via the type box at the bottom of your screen. You will need to scroll down to see this, whether you're using a laptop, tablet, computer or smartphone. At the end of the presentation, the presenter will then run their Q&A, whereby they will verbally respond to each question. They will read out the question, who's asked it, and will then say a response. You can also, if you click all in the question box, you'll be able to see questions asked by everybody. So we'll be able to keep an open dialogue that you're used to in these types of meetings. If you do have any problems throughout the session, Yvonne is on hand to try and help. She's our IT whiz for the day, and you can contact her on 07764 429 473. That's 07764 429 473. And I'll pass you over to Liam now.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Liam from the Thameslink Programme Communications team. I've met most of you before, I think. And as Catherine said, I'm here to give you an update on the Thameslink Programme infrastructure, particularly around London Bridge, and how it's what's been happening there in the first sort of 7 weeks since we opened fully on January the 2nd. It was great to meet some more of you on January the 2nd for in the first opening week for some of our stakeholder events. I hope you enjoyed those. So I've got a few things to update on. Some are related to operational things in the station, and a few other things about things that have been brought to the station recently. So I'll start off with the Wi-Fi, which has recently launched at London Bridge Station. So London Bridge has become the second of Network Rail's managed stations to launch Wi-Fi, following on from Euston, which launched in 2016. So the Wi-Fi is free for all people who use London Bridge. So next time you're there, be sure to take advantage of that. Should be pretty quick, pretty good. It's been pretty reliable at Euston. They've got more than 200,000 users now, and in the first 3 or 4 weeks since it launched at London Bridge, there's nearly 20,000 users already, and it's reportedly been performing very well. It's not only high-speed Wi-Fi that you can get, there's also a portal which comes along with the service if you sign up as a user, where you can get travel updates, downloadable magazines, movie trailers, a section with games for kids, and also a retail directory and details of offers that the station retailers may have. They'll all be updated on there in real time. So if there are any new offers, you'll be able to keep checking and finding out about those as they appear at the station. So to sign up for that free Wi-Fi, when you're at the station, open the Wi-Fi on your device while in the station, connect to the free station Wi-Fi is the name of it, and then follow the on-screen instructions. It's very straightforward. So we hope that'll improve the user experience for you at London Bridge. It should be available in all areas of the station. Moving on to retail now. Obviously, London Bridge, a number of new retail units have been built at the station. Not all of them have opened as of yet. So a quick update for you on what has opened and what's coming up in the next few weeks related to retail at London Bridge. So you may have seen Hamleys. That's the picture on the slide that you can see now. That opened a couple of weeks ago now in the Western Arcade, the first shop to open in the Western Arcade. Really glad to have such a great brand in the station. And there will be a number of other quality fashion and luxury brands opening in the coming months. So Cath Kidston, you may have noticed the sign has gone up in the Western Arcade as well, a few doors down from Hamleys. That will be the next retailer to open in the Western Arcade, either this week or early next week. And a number of others have also been announced recently, including MAC, Rituals, Ted Baker, and The Body Shop, which will be joining in the coming weeks and months. So obviously there'll be a lot more work to do to get those retailers ready to be open, and a lot more to follow. There'll be around 80 retail units in total when complete, and the retail portfolio should hopefully be finished and completely ready by October of this year. So that's a little bit of a retail update for you there. And moving on to some things that have been going on in the station, or one of the things that's going on in the station currently. In the downstairs, the street level concourse on the St Thomas Street side of the station, you may have noticed if you've been through the station in the last few days or so, there is an exhibition of the Landscape Photographer of the Year, which is something which is sponsored by Network Realm and being displayed in London Bridge currently. Some amazing pictures there. So if the next time you are in the station, check those out. It'll be there for a couple of weeks. And just to give you a heads up, following on from the mini museum that we did to mark London Bridge's 180th birthday in December 2016, we will be ourselves, the Thameslink Programme Communications team, putting in another mini museum about the history of London Bridge, a more recent history of London Bridge, in about 3 or 4 weeks' time. So keep your eyes peeled for that in a similar area of the station, so in the street level concourse on the St Thomas Street side, in that space near the customer information screens there. So moving on to more operational updates now, station operations. The Western Arcade I talked about, where Hamleys and the other retailers are opening, the passageway between the tube and the main street level concourse. There is still quite a lot of work to do in there. You'll notice that one of the 3 passageways has been closed off for a few weeks now. That closure is to do with water ingress at the station. We're having some issues dealing with that, and while that work continues, that south side of the passageway will continue to be fenced off, but the closure will also be extended, has been extended to include weekends and evenings now. So weekends all day, and on weekdays between 10 PM and 5 AM, that western passageway is completely closed. You will not be able to access the tube via that route during those times. During those times and those closures, the London Underground station can still be accessed using Tooley Street or St Thomas Street. And so that's the way to go if you are in the station during those times and need to get to the tube. Moving up to the Shard level concourse, you see the area in the red box there. That's what's known as the Western Passageway. It's where the old Kentlink, where the old escalators from that took you up to the old southeastern platforms are, and it's also where you can access the bridge to the Cotton Centre. That area isn't currently closed, but will be closing in the next couple of weeks for around 2 months. So between March and May, that passageway will be closed while we finish off some jobs in there in advance of the official opening of the station towards the middle of May. So again, that is an access way to the tube, but there are plenty of other options down the Shard escalators that you can see at the bottom of the map there, or there is also the other entrance down near the Mini Shard building or the News UK building across the bus station, which you can also use to access the London Underground when that is closed. And you can also go down, of course, down to the main concourse and use the other routes there. And there will be some other work going on in this Shard concourse area as well over the coming months before the station fully opens in May. So obviously there's still a lot of hoarding in the area, a lot of work going on the retail units in that area. That will continue, and also the gate line will be moved at some point. The gate line, which is nearer to the Shard, will be moving back towards the other gate lines so that they are in line. And then also will be some work on the CIS screens. There's some currently outside the doorways there. They'll be moved inside, and they're in a temporary position currently while the work has been ongoing. As the work continues to approach completion, you'll notice some things moving around, just to make you aware of that Shard level area. You will also notice that some of the ticket machines have already moved inside as part of that work. So just to be aware of those changes coming up in the Shard concourse area. Moving on to weekend engineering on the track away from the station. Obviously, Thameslink programme, there's still some work to do out on the track. No more work which will affect working days. December was the last impact on working days, but weekend and evening engineering will be continuing until around the end of May. Focused on the southeastern Cannon Street lines, but there may be some impacts on Southern and Thameslink. It should be fairly minimal, but we would advise you to continue checking before you travel with Thameslink or Southern or at nationalrail.co.uk. Particularly around Easter and the 2 May bank holidays, obviously, as that's when our work tends to be concentrated. And at Easter, there may be some impacts on station operations as well, but those aren't confirmed yet. Over the Easter weekend, there may be some areas of the station which are closed, so we can do a bit more work than would normally be possible. So that's it for station operations at London Bridge. Just a quick reminder to finish about how you can stay in touch with us. Obviously, you've got our website at thameslinkprogram.co.uk, our Twitter at Thameslink Programme. And if you weren't aware, we are also on Instagram at TL Programme. You can get pictures from behind the hoardings, great pictures like the one you can see behind you with fascinating facts, and some other interesting pictures as we transform north-south travel through London. So if you aren't already connected with us on Instagram, I'd highly recommend you do so. And that's about it from me, so I will pass you on. Oh, sorry, we'll move on to the Q&A. Apologies about that. Of course. So, got a question from Neil. Is there any news on providing toilets on the platform side of the gate lines at ground level? That is something which is being reviewed currently. That feedback has been passed on to the station team, and they are looking to look into whether there is a solution that can be found for that. So obviously we've had a number of different people feedback that they would like there to be toilets on the gate line side of the concourse. There won't be any at platform level, but there is some possibility that there may be some retrofitted onto the paid side of the concourse. But that is something that's been looked at as part of station reviews. Station operations will be reviewed going forward in around sort of June, July time, once the Thameslink services are fully returned to the station, and the station's been fully operational in that way for a couple of months. All that sort of thing will be looked at around that time. We've had another question. So has there been any feedback from customers about the lack of weatherproofing on the upper concourses? We have had some feedback about that, about the canopies and other things related to that. So the reason that there isn't a full roof covering the platform level of the station is because the cost of that and the need for the construction to be phased meant that having a full coverage solution wouldn't have been an option without costing a great deal and being incredibly complicated. So the decision was taken to have full-length canopies instead. Obviously, the canopies can, on occasional instances of inclement weather, allow some rain onto the platforms, but I think generally in most weathers they do, keep most passengers dry, and they are full length, which is not something you see at most stations. So you should be able to find a dry spot on those platforms. Moving on to the next question. The question is it possible to avoid the closure of Balcombe Tunnel and do the work over traditional weekend closures? That is something that has been thought about. As we announced you may have noticed in the press release announcing the closure, it would take, I think, around 90 weekend closures to do the same amount of work compared to doing it over 2 9-day blockades. So it has been looked at, but the disruption simply would be worse than doing it in the way that we have decided to do it. Nearly 2 years of weekend closures compared to 2 9-day closures, and the decision was taken that the 2 9-day closures was the least disruptive for passengers. Is there any more questions while I'm here? Oh, all right, well, that's great. Thank you all for your questions, and I hope that was useful, and I will pass you on to Phil now.
Right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Phil Hutchinson, Head of Strategic Planning for GTR. We're joined here by Jane as well, the Consultation Project Manager. We're here now to update you with the latest on the 2018 timetable. So what we're going to do is we have a set of slides where we talk through what's planned, what the results of our consultation have been, and where we're going from here. Very outset, we're in the final stages now of confirming our timetable with Network Rail, and within the next few days, all our train plans will be issued online for people to see, and at which point we will start to see the timetable come through. Initially, though, for this session, we were unable to provide any detailed timetables in advance of that, and apologies for that, but that was due to the time or the work that's still ongoing with Network Rail. Okay, so what we're going to talk about in this section is the journey that we've been on, the development to implementation, the phasing, and then a route by route highlights analysis, followed by the question and answer session. So in terms of where we've been, the start of the GTR franchise was actually in September 2014 for the Thameslink and Great Northern, and then it was joined in July 2015 by our Southern network. The GTR franchise was the size it is to enable the development of a consistent timetable, which is what we have been developing right the way throughout this franchise period. The significant changes that Thameslink will bring was very important to me and the team here at GTR, that we held around a number of phases of consultation. The changes were so large and so very large changing that it was we wanted to discuss the routes, calling patterns and frequencies of the train services, particularly of the Thameslink network, as early as we could. So we started that process in September 2016 with a very detailed 3-month consultation into that, and thank you for those who took part. Phase 2, we looked at the detail of the Monday to Friday timetables in June and July of 2017. That was slightly later than planned and shorter due to the general election, but nevertheless we achieved 10,000 responses, and that is where we have been working our hardest to address as many of the themes that were created or highlighted in that consultation phase. What we have done is made literally hundreds of changes on the back of that, and really it's been a very detailed piece of exercise that one that we wouldn't have been able to be where we are without it, and clearly that is what we'll discuss today. Phase 3 was the weekends, which was slightly later in the year, November and December, where we detailed the latest position on the weekend timetable. So all of the feedback in the next will become available. We'll be briefing our stakeholders, this being one of the first meetings of that, and from next week, as I said, all of the all of the feedback and the timetable will be issued on Rail Plan 2020 from the end of this week. Certainly in rail on National Rail website, inquiries website, you'll be able to look at particular journeys, and from now on we will be issuing a very detailed Rail Plan 2020 ramp up, which will detail all of the changes that our passengers need to know in advance of May. The day one of the timetable is Sunday the 20th of May. It's a day that is counting down and getting ever closer, but we're getting ready. You may have seen a number of trains running via London Bridge. We will be making passenger calls very shortly, advertised passenger calls. We'll also be starting, hopefully very soon, some preview trains as well. So the preview trains running between Peterborough and Horsham in advance of the timetable starting in May. So we were also as well, it's worth saying, training hundreds of drivers over new routes. That has been happening since the new infrastructure was handed over to us in January of 2018. So really starting to see some very significant moves towards May, particularly behind the scenes, but now visible to our passengers and stakeholders as well. Okay, so do apologise. What does the 2018 contain? So as we've spoken about in the past, this is a complete redesign of the timetable, something only ever achievable with GTR being the one operator on the Brighton Main Line, but also how we've constructed our timetable together, working with other operators. So the simple message is, at this point, everything changes in May. Nothing will remain the same. So a very simple message to our passengers will be: check your journeys, check how you travel. There may be different ways of traveling with new routes created that have not been there before, and particularly later in the year in 2018, when the Elizabeth line opens at Farringdon, that opens up a whole vast amount of journey opportunities with one change of train at Farringdon. The way in which we've looked at our timetable and the construction of it has been one that we've taken it back to basics and looked at how we can provide a service that's both reliable and will perform. So creating what we call self-contained diagrams and train crew is a very significant part of that. Also, realistic station dwell times and creating a repeating pattern timetable that has the base foundations of our timetable planning rules embedded within it is absolutely critical. So the timetable in which we will be operating from May contains a number of changes to that, and of course that will in itself bring a better, more reliable railway, particularly on the Brighton Main Line and through the Thameslink core and through our southern metro region. So phasing, we're going to just cover phasing in terms of what, why and how. So we would be, as announced by the Department for Transport and Asset of GTR, we will be phasing this timetable in from May in terms of the timetable for Thameslink. It's a gradual introduction with no big bang approaches. However, there will be a small bang. There'll still be a big bang, but a much smaller bang, and that is particularly because every part of our southern network changes, as well as new routes will start to appear on the Thameslink network. Currently, we run 15 trains an hour in the high peak periods of through the central London section. That will increase from May 2018 to 18, followed by December to 20, May 19 to 22, and December 19 to 24. The off-peak frequencies will increase through the core in that period as well, and 70% of the overall benefits of Thameslink will be realised in May 2018, and we'll be providing eventually some figures, facts and figures for each and every station in terms of how that has changed, and we're finalising that at the moment. What changes in May as well is a number of operators, so Great Northern trains that are currently operated by Great Northern, or trains that are currently operated by Southern or Southeastern, may swap around in many cases. So a number of trains will become Thameslink. Equally, there'll be a number of routes such as the Beckenham Junction via West Dulwich line that will transfer across to Southeastern. Equally, there'll be some trains from Southeastern that will be coming across to us on the Greenwich line, and clearly a lot of our communications will be related to your change of operator. The phasing of the timetable is absolutely the right thing to do. It embeds the benefits on a staggered way that allows us to utilise and learn from the timetable and all the new technology that comes with it that will be appearing very soon afterwards. So in terms of what we have, what our consultation outputs were, is that a number of people have said that, you know, why are my journeys longer, and what we are doing about it. Well, we've completely rewritten the timetable, and as I said, we need to reflect the doubling of passenger numbers both on the Southern network in 12 years and on the Great Northern and Thameslink networks in 16 years. That's a phenomenal amount. Our timetables are just not fit for what the numbers of people who we are carrying at this present time. So therefore, we have had to completely rewrite it and also allow for adequate time for passengers to alight and aboard the train in a safe manner. So a number of trains will have a slightly longer journey time, but it reflects entirely what is out there today. And also we reviewed all the intermediate running times to make sure that our timetable reflects reality. We want our passengers to rely on our services and know that we can deliver their journey from A to B when we say we can. Yes, things will go wrong from time to time, but we need to remove the issues around where there's unexplained delay in the network at the moment. So when we issue our consultation, we were asked, literally had 10,000 responses, and some people may be asking, I have asked the question, why is it not listed? It doesn't necessarily mean that we haven't listened or raised or answered the point. However, we've combined all the comments into an active list and picked out the main points that have been raised. As I said, 100 or so changes have been made to this timetable on the back of that, and in many cases, you know, one of the reasons why we ensured that Jane, the consultation manager, was part of our team here, part of the timetable team, is so that as people raise things on the day, we can then actually act on it there and then. And that has been an invaluable process that has helped, you know, really change the way this consultation and timetable process is developed. We haven't been able to look at all of the weekend feedback yet. We were keen to do a consultation on the end position of the 2018 timetable. Clearly, May will pick up a few of those, but it has been announced, obviously, that Thameslink will be phased over a longer period, and we will be looking to review the Sunday element of the timetable in particular. So the May 18 timetable is a transitional one. It needs to take into account the £300 million investment that has been taken or given to the Network Rail to improve the infrastructure reliability throughout the network. So therefore, as Liam alluded to earlier, there's a number of possessions required on the Brighton main line in the early part of May 2018 through to December, where simply the line will be closed, and therefore one of the reasons why we're not initially putting in a Cambridge to Brighton train, for example, is because it would never actually get to Brighton. So we'll be reviewing the Sunday timetable as a whole, and likely to make changes to that effect and take into account all the feedback that was raised by May 2019. So the final question, particularly around the network, was when does the timetable you've previously consulted on actually start? We deliberately consulted on the end position of the timetable, so that was always at the time when all the Thameslink network routes would be together in one place. And that still stands. However, the phasing of that timetable is now December 19. Equally, all of the timetable elements will be phased in during that time. So all of the changes on Southern will be implemented in May 2018, and then the phasing of Thameslink added to the network occurs at various points along the way. The Great Northern changes will be in place by partially May 18 and then through to early part of 2019. So I'll just give you some dates in terms of what we are looking at in the next few weeks. Particularly now is where we're starting to update our stakeholders on the changes of the timetable, and also, as I said earlier, the timetable is available on the National Rail website by the end of February, so people will start to be able to see their journeys and the key dates in terms of what's to be expected and what the new layout will look like. We'll be holding our stakeholder forums on the 26th and the 28th of February for the Southern and the Great Northern Thameslink respectively. At that point, we'll also be hopefully be able to share some of the early drafts of the timetables as well for local areas there. We're then going to start up the process of ramping up Rail Plan 2020 with localised posters at stations and really hammering home the message to our passengers of the change. So localised posters at stations, passenger communications across various channels, be it on the train, on the station, through posters, through websites, through newspaper articles, rail press, lots of interviews taking place at the moment about how we've gone about our work here. Secondly, pocket timetables will be available at stations from the end of April, so 4 weeks prior to the timetable change. However, we will do our best to ensure that timetables are placed onto our website in advance of that. This is the pocket timetables that will be at the stations at the end of April, but we'll be issuing things, the detail earlier than that. And then, of course, the timetable starts at phase 1 on Sunday, the 20th of May. And then we'll be going to review and the ongoing dialogue from June onwards. How can we improve things should we need to? And then how do we review what's happened and what can we do going forward? So those are the key dates that I wanted to highlight at the moment. What you'll also see is this Rail Plan 2020 poster here, or a poster. That's this type of branding that will be coming around, and also for every station, we will have a highlights of what's the effects for the stations will be on each route. So there'll be a clear drop down of that, and then also eventually we'll be issuing some very detailed changes by route to ensure that passengers know exactly the things to look out for with changes coming up. So what we're going to cover now is the route by route basis, and also so we'll go through route by route in terms of what that looks like. So in terms of our Thameslink Metro routes, all the routes there will see we'll see 4 trains an hour throughout the day. So this was one of our very early consultation pieces. This was not in our franchise to do. So Catford Loop is going to be a major beneficiary of Thameslink, one that we one that we in moving Thameslink routes from where previously we were going to Caterham and Tattenham Corner, we put them, or made representations to move to Catford with a new route between Luton, Orpington and Welwyn Garden City in Sevenoaks. That was a fantastic response on that one throughout the consultation, and we have met with multiple stakeholders along the Catford Loop who strongly support all of what we're doing, and that really helped drive home the case to the department who funds all of the timetable changes in this franchise to back this progress. So we will be introducing 4 trains an hour from May along the Catford Loop, and that includes from early in the morning right the way through until the end of the day on both Mondays to Fridays and Saturdays. On Sundays initially it will be 2 trains an hour. That's due to the engineering works that are taking place on the route, but one of the improvements we want to make in the future is 4 trains an hour on a Sunday as well. In terms of phasing, the Sevenoaks services initially from May will be running to and from Blackfriars. They will get extended to Welwyn Garden City in the peak periods from May 2019. Either side of the Thameslink route, there will still be a King's Cross to Welwyn Garden City in the peak period from May, half hourly in the peak periods. So it would operate as separate trains, but will be joined together in May 19. Equally from May 2018, there'll be a new route introduced between Luton and Rainham via Greenwich and Dartford, and that is one of the routes that will be connecting the Elizabeth line for both at Abbeywood and at Farringdon, and then onwards, creating additional services serving Elstree and Borehamwood and Mill Hill Broadway with 6 trains an hour throughout the day. That also is a frequency increase for both Mondays to Fridays and Saturdays as well. On Sundays, the Thameslink South route through to St Albans and Luton will double the frequency on the stopping service after 12 o'clock on Sundays, and until 12 o'clock there's engineering works on the line, so we weren't able to increase the frequency at that time. But passengers on the southern end of the Thameslink route will benefit from a greater frequency on Sundays as well. Moving on to the Thameslink main line, there's a number of routes that will be becoming part of the Thameslink network, so a wider Horsham, East Grinstead, Littlehampton. So every single route will be introduced from May 2018, albeit some of them will be in a slightly reduced frequency initially. So our new routes will be from Horsham to Peterborough on the Great Northern Line, East Grinstead to Bedford, which replaces a Southern to London Bridge train and provides additional trains through to Bedford, Littlehampton to Bedford. Initially it will be 2 trains per peak period in each direction, but will increase to 3 from December 2018. Also, one of our new routes, exciting new routes really, actually, in terms of the benefits of Thameslink, will be the Cambridge to Gatwick Airport and Brighton service. Initially that will be once an hour until December 18, then that will increase to 2 trains an hour for Mondays to Saturdays throughout the week. On Sundays there will be no direct service between Cambridge and Brighton initially, but that's firmly in our plans to introduce from later in the period, potentially from May 2019. In terms of the journeys will be as you've seen from our review of the timetable, the journeys will be more realistic. There will be a modest amount of performance time approaching and leaving the core. That is to ensure that any minor delay that occurs throughout the journey due to a variety of reasons, we will be able to provide realistic recovery into the schedules. That's important, particularly as trains are coming from cross-boundary routes, interacting with intercity trains and also lots of other different operators to the south. All of our Thameslink trains will be operated by Class 700s. All the newer version of the trains will be fitted with tables and Wi-Fi, and there is a program to retrofit tables and Wi-Fi to the remaining fleet across the piece. All trains will be calling again at London Bridge, those that are routed that way, so there'll be a significant increase in both journey opportunities from the north of the river and south through to London Bridge. That reduces the journey time. Also, calling at London Bridge will be a feature that will be starting very, very soon, and ramping up all the way through until May, when the official launch happens. Both from St Albans as well will benefit from more trains along the line. Also Kentish Town as well, and as well as Radlett, Eltrim, Borehamwood, Mill Hill, Broadway will increase to 6 trains an hour during the off-peak period. We have focused all of our efforts into providing the full service on the Thameslink Midland Main Line route, due to the East Midlands trains' impact on our services. So, as probably has been widely reported now, East Midlands trains are unable to call at Bedford and Luton on weekday peak services towards London. Peak services being defined as those arriving between 0700 and 10 o'clock in the morning, and 1600 to 1900 in the evening departing from London. So we were, once the situation had become aware of that, or once we'd become aware of that, we were in discussions with the Department of Transport to provide a half-hourly fast service from Bedford to Luton, St Albans, down to St Pancras, with a journey time of around 45 to 47 minutes. So those are now confirmed. We've worked closely with Network Rail to ensure that they would be in the timetable. We have now had the confirmation that those services can be accommodated, and those are what we will be providing. These services will remain in place until at least December 2019. Sorry, December 2020, correction there. That is when the wider modernisation of the Midland Main Line will be completed, particularly north of Bedford, where there is electrification works and doubling of the track in that area. It's worth noting that the Thameslink timetable, when this franchise was let, was due to all of the infrastructure north of Bedford was due to be in place by December 2017, which would have meant that our service would have integrated better than they do currently with the East Midlands pattern of services, and also the limited infrastructure on the line. Once that is completed by December 2020, we will be able to review the whole timetable again, and East Midlands Trains, as part of a new franchise, will clearly be considering how best to serve the line with 6 trains an hour, and at that point fairly confident that stops at Bedford and Luton can be reinstated. So what does that mean for our passengers on the Midland Main Line? That does mean that some passengers at Flitwick, Leagrave and Harpenden will see a slightly reduced service from what we were planning to. Details on your screen now. However, what we have today is a current mix of 8 and 12 coach trains. We'll be planning all of those trains to operate with 12 coaches to give the better capacity both in seats and standing spaces as best as we can. Also, we've been very careful and mindful to provide the frequency of services at those stations to provide the best gaps in the service, so there isn't any bunching. Full details of that will be coming out in the coming days. In terms of the further impacts, there's some further impacts on the screens there from Flitwick, Leagrave, where there's no changes from today, or Harpenden, where there's a slight reduction. But as I said, we've done our best to ensure that we have catered for everybody as we can on that route. On the Great Northern Line, so Hertford Loop lines, we'll see new trains coming in place and starting to be rolled out from later this year in the autumn. We will be operating increased off-peak frequency services, 4 trains an hour throughout the off-peak periods for most stations from May 2018. So that's a significant increase in both the off-peak of weekdays and at weekends, where in fact we'll be doubling the services there. Eventually, from May 19, the 6 trains an hour in the off-peak on the Hertford Loop line that was identified will be in place from probably May 19. And then the peak services until we have the full fleet of Class 717s, which is the new trains, we'll be running the same level of peak services as we do today. The big news on the Hertford Loop line, of course, though, is that the previously advertised rail replacement bus service between Hertford North and Watton at Stone to Stevenage will now not be in place until December 2018. Just to recap, the reason why we're in that place of running a replacement bus is because of the lack of infrastructure that was due to be built at Stevenage not being in place. There are plans by the government and Network Rail to ensure that the new platform is in place during 2021. So a shorter period of time to operate the bus service there, and we'll continue to work with our local stakeholders and council representatives to ensure that is introduced in the best manner. Various stations on the Wimbledon Loop line from December 2018 will see an increase in peak services. I won't list them all through there now. There's been various campaigns around some of those stations. Most stations will not lose out on that. In fact, there'll be a significant increase in both on-board capacity but also frequency throughout the day. The Alexandra Palace to Moorgate section, particularly serving Haringey and Hornsey, peak services will no longer call at those stations on the Welwyn Garden City to Moorgate line. However, the stations do benefit from an uplift in services from particularly December 18, when the peak services are improved from there. One of the things that we set out in the consultation was that, and actually many people were not affected by that change. On the Welwyn route, again, a number of services will be beginning to filter through there. Again, there'll be an increase in frequency from Moorgate, so 4 trains an hour from the start of the day to the end of the day for most stations along the line. One of the beneficiaries of that is Hadley Wood, where there was a long standing campaign for off-peak services, which we've been able to provide. Welwyn Green and Brookmans Park, however, will be 2 trains an hour, which is a reduction in the off-peak, reflecting the passenger numbers at that time. Equally, the Welwyn route will also benefit from Cambridge to Maidstone services, which serve some of those stations along the line, and also a bespoke Thameslink to Welwyn Garden City service, again, that will provide additional capacity along the line as well. Those services will be in place from May 2018, operating to and from King's Cross, but eventually will be plugged into the Thameslink network in phases during 2019. A couple of stations on the route that generated a few comments, and that's Hitchin, Nebworth and Welwyn North. One of the things that we were asked to look at was how can we improve the post-evening peak service. So pleased to say that we've had agreement to operate additional trains from King's Cross to Baldock at 19:54, 20:54 and 21:54, and they will call at Nebworth, Hitchin, Stevenage, Letchworth and Baldock, and that will provide a faster train through that route. Unfortunately, not able to call at Welwyn North. This is due to a open access operator following our departure immediately after, at 57 minutes past the hour from King's Cross, which means that we have to clear the Welwyn Viaduct section in time to allow it to pass. I'm sure most people agree that's a vast improvement on what we were able to originally offer, and that is one of the direct results of consultation responses there. We've covered Stevenage so far as the rail replacement bus, but Stevenage sees a significant increase in the number of Thameslink trains calling there, both creating connectivity, extra capacity, and also a frequency increase of a train every 15 minutes of a fast nature through to Finsbury Park and some Pancras International. Initially in May 2018, some of those services will either not operate or will operate to King's Cross. So as part of our communications, we will be ensuring how we inform our passengers which London terminal to use, particularly in the early phases. But from December 2018, all the benefits are realised on that route with regards to the faster services, and then eventually in December 19, the Thameslink services through to Maidstone will begin. Some particular points for Nebworth there. Again, some areas that one particular station that is that had some feedback, so we'll be able to operate some Thameslink trains and Cambridge services, as well as the fast service to King's Cross on the Great Northern route. Peterborough to Stevenage, clearly all trains to Peterborough, or all trains that currently serve Welwyn Garden City, Potters Bar, Hatfield will be running to Cambridge, and that allows us to speed up some of the services for Thameslink routes from Peterborough on the Stevenage section. So there'll be 2 trains an hour, semi-fast, all the way to London and beyond to Gatwick and Horsham. On the King's Lynn to Cambridge line, we'll be providing the Maidstone service from December 2019. That's an increase in services serving the village stations, and also the new service between Cambridge and Brighton via Gatwick will commence in full from December 2018, and that will provide a journey time of Gatwick under 2 hours. The King's Cross to Cambridge and King's Lynn service will continue twice an hour. We're anticipating there being plans to upgrade the platforms, level crossings, power supplies for 8 carriages running during 2019, which is clearly something we're really pushing Network Rail to do, and we wish to deliver that as quickly as possible. For Royston, Letchworth and the Baldock and village stations, this has generated quite a lot of interest as part of our consultation, on which we've worked hard with the user groups to address and ensure the best fit for their needs. So we'll be making we've made some further changes to those services, and we hope that we've delivered arrived at a decision that most people will be happy with on that route, and we continue to do that and work with those user groups and we'll continue to review the service to make sure that we are delivering the right capacity and train services for that route. You wish to ask on those routes, happy to do so now, but we wanted to provide as much time for questions in this session. So we've got approximately, I think, an hour to go through any specific questions, and as the previous presenter Liam stated, any question that's asked, I will read out the question, who is it from, and I will answer the question as we go through. So from Neil, can anything be said on the timing of table and Wi-Fi to the older Class 700s? So the DFT has an aspiration to retrofit Wi-Fi and seatback tables to the 69 units that will have not been fitted at build, but to date there is no further update on timescales that we can share. The unit numbers are 70 to 115, are being built with seatback tables and are Wi-Fi enabled. However, we're currently accepting these at a rate of 2 a week, and these will start to appear more regularly in passenger service across the network. Clearly, taking trains out of use at this time when we're ramping up is not some. It takes about a week to fit both the Wi-Fi and the seatback tables, so we have to schedule that in with Siemens and our suppliers, while still run a reliable train service that covers the full train service. Also from Neil, I still remain keen for printed and PDF timetables that cover journeys that involve a change of train, for instance, one booklet to cover Leagrave to West Hampstead Thameslink. So, thanks for your question on that, Neil. As discussed, we've passed your feedback to our head of customer information. It has also been considered as part of our customer information working group specifically set up for the May 2018 timetable launch. So I have seen some of the drafts for the timetables, and I will personally feed that through to the group as well, as we have there. Okay, so next question from Roger: will the Peterborough to Horsham preview trains be in passenger service? So we fully intend that to be the case, but there are certain things that we have to have agreement in place for. The answer is we absolutely want to be. The full intention is that to be the case from the 26th of February, but we'll come back to you once we've received the confirmation from Network Rail and our safety advisors.
Hi everyone, it's Catherine back again. So I think we'll just wait a few minutes to give people an opportunity to type any more questions out. Thank you for those of you that have already submitted some questions. Will be available for the next hour that we've got. So just bear with us for the time being, and we'll wait and see if any more questions come through.
Right, we had a question from Shelley. Currently on the Class 700s, the rear carriage in direction of travel is handed over to standard class ticket holders. Is this a permanent arrangement? So yes, that is the case. We are, of course, we will review the first class take up on some of our routes. Particularly on the southern part of the network, there are more first class usage on the southern end of the lines, not so much in the north, but the arrangement of the first class section being declassified at the rear part of the train and direction of travel will remain in place until further notice. Hi, yes, we've had a question from Roger. Will there be any Baldock hitch in King's Cross Great Northern enhancements to Thameslink in the morning peak period? So we will be running additional trains from Baldock hitching to King's Cross every 30 minutes during the peak period. That will run eight carriages for the peak period only, so it will just be for the peak period only. It won't extend beyond that. We have, however, made some alterations to some early morning trains in the Royston Letchworth area to ensure that passengers who currently enjoy an early train to London will continue to do so. Initially in May 2018, the Baldock trains will be starting back from Royston to facilitate some changes there, particularly with some of the phasing of the Thameslink timetable, and after which they'll revert to starting from Baldock. Hi, we've had another question from Neil. Can you say something about contingency planning and service recovery, e.g. a problem at Purley equals no trains north of Luton? So we're spending a great deal of time looking at our contingency planning and how we would recover the service. So yeah, incidents will occur from time to time, but we've done it in such a way that we're ensuring that our plans are both robust in terms of our train route knowledge for diversion routes, and also how we turn a service around or allow for the problems to be fixed and then the service be put back together again. So there are a number of phases in which there are a number of parts to this question. First of all services will be on the Thameslink network will be running as a self-contained network. So that's first and foremost. So there'll be no mixing of routes. So if a particular problem occurs on one aspect of the line, it will impact that train or that route only, or those routes, depending on the severity of it. Equally with that, our train crew will only operate those trains. So in their duty, there will not be mixing of trains from one route to another. So in many cases, our drivers will be running to and both through the core. There'll be very little intermediate reliefs of drivers, so we'll be able to run trains from end to end with one driver and return in the other way. Equally, on top of that, our Thameslink network and indeed our Southern network and Great Northern will benefit from a longer turnaround time at each end of the route. So that will mean less intervention required for times when things go wrong, or need for corrective action such as skip stopping or the like. The other part to this is our train crew route knowledge and their diversionary capability. So every driver who operates train through the Central London section will have a diversionary route knowledge capability. So should a problem occur on through London Bridge, there'll be a diversion route capability for at least one route on all of our routes to operate, so we'll be able to divert around. Equally, drivers will also be trained to terminate a train at London Bridge or at Finsbury Park, and then run on a freight line to reverse and go back north if it's from the East Coast Main Line side, or if it's coming in from the north into St Pancras or high level, or terminate short and run around. So these contingency plans are very much at a fairly advanced stage. If we want to ask some of our colleagues to come along to one of the stakeholder events, I'm sure they'll be able to answer the question a little bit further than what I have. But in terms of making sure that we have the foundations to deliver a reliable contingency plan when things go wrong, those are the things that we've factored in into both the train plan in terms of diversion route knowledge capability, the ability to keep trains and drivers together, segregating and separating the routes out so there's no cross-contamination between other routes, which is something that happens today. So an incident in Kent can immediately impact the Brighton Main Line services in the way that the stock and the crew are put together. So looking at it very differently from May 2018 onwards. Clearly all of that is going to take a little bit of a lead up time to get everybody trained into that state, but we're well on the way. Thank you. Yep. So another question from Neil regarding the more routine aspects of our operations, e.g. the occasional habit at the moment is to announce skip stopping at St Pancras going north, resulted everybody gets off and crowd a platform, and added to that Great Northern passengers, those platforms could become very crowded. So that's a good question. The way in which our control and setup is being looked at is again, it's how we sort of transform the way our systems, operating systems, talk to one another. And one of the things that we probably haven't talked about much in these forums is actually what we're doing with our back office system. So we're one of the things that GTR is investing in is software that will enable smarter decisions to take place. So in our control systems, new systems such as Moses is what we call it, and I don't know what that means in terms of breaking down, but essentially it means a new information technology system that will enable better, more smarter actions to take place when things go wrong. One of those things might be in the future, how we inform and make decisions around skip stopping. Skip stopping is not something we want to do. We will only put it in place if it's to protect the overall integrity of the timetable, particularly if it's returning back or trains are returning back from destinations, so they do so on time. But the new systems in place are being rolled out now. That will mean that both the decision taken to any corrective action will be better communicated with our staff, so and indeed our drivers. So the occasions where that happens at St Pancras, I would hope that would be taken a lot sooner, a lot smarter, and certainly not at the last minute like you've probably experienced at St Pancras. And clearly the overall passenger impact will be taken into account with that, and a lot of the new systems that we have on will be rolled out will include loadings of the train. So at the moment that isn't necessarily taken into account because that information is not readily available, whereas if we have a full train of thousands of passengers making a decision to remove stops, clearly won't be the right one in that regard. So a number of fronts on that one in terms of how we're improving our communication through information technology developments. Thank you. Yeah, so just in response to that, your comment, Neil, about yes, please, on a stakeholder update on a high level plan, e.g. a London Bridge problem, service thinning out at Herne Hill. We will arrange a more detailed, thorough update on contingency planning at the next session. So the next stakeholder reference group is the time that we'll be able to be in a much better place to be able to explain exactly what does it mean. There are various service delivery groups are what they're called, that are set up now looking at the contingency plans. So we'll be able to put the right people in the right place to update you with the outcome of all of those parts with a contingency plan, and that will be shared back at the next TLP stakeholder reference group meeting, which I think meets around about the end of March. Thank you. Right, we've had a timetable question from Roger. How soon after a King's Cross peak service arrives at Stevenage, I think, which is scheduled at 29 and 59 minutes past each hour, will a Thameslink service for Hitchin arrive? So I'm just going to go and check our timetable details now and get back to you as soon as I can. Hi, it's Phil here again. The previous question that Roger asked about the Stevenage connection at Hitchin with a Thameslink train, I will email you separately, Roger, to get the full info. I haven't thought I had access to something, but I don't at the moment. We're in a separate building from our normal office, so I'll reply back to you as soon as we can. We haven't had many further questions now, so we're going to wrap up this section. If you've got any further questions, feel free to email. We haven't had many further questions now, so we're going to wrap up this section. If you've got any further questions, feel free to email.
Hi everyone, it's Catherine Cox back again. So thank you very much for joining us today, and particularly as it's our first webinar. I know it's quite a new concept for us, but I think hopefully you'll agree that this was quite a successful session. We'd really appreciate your feedback, particularly as this is the first webinar session, either via email or we can give you a quick phone call afterwards to discuss. We'd really appreciate your feedback on how we can improve the webinars going forward, as we look forward to them becoming quite an integral part of our stakeholder engagement campaign with you. So we're putting the full recording onto the stakeholder direction later this week, and it'll be available for everyone to play back, watch, listen to again. This will also include the questions that you've submitted and the answers. So what I'll also do, as this is the TLP Stakeholder Reference Group, I'll also put together some minutes reflecting the conversation and circulate these to you as an official record of the session in the traditional way, and we'll also include the link to the extranet as well for this. If you haven't used your account on the extranet for a while, I will circulate a link to you all after this session, and if we need to reactivate any of your accounts or update the passwords, then Lawrence and myself can do that with you. So thanks again for joining us this afternoon, everyone. I hope you found it a useful session, and I'm sure we will see most of you next week at our stakeholder forums. That's the Southern and Gatwick Express Forum on Monday the 26th, at the Sofitel at Gatwick Airport, and the Thameslink and Great Northern session at Old Street on Wednesday the 28th in the evening. Thanks very much.